when Steve and I decided to do this, to get on this journey of becoming foster parents, we had no one in our sphere that was in this community. Mm-hmm. So we really just had no idea what we were doing, what we were getting into. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it feels important to me to raise awareness for just people to understand more. Mm-hmm. The system is broken, to say the least. Yeah. And that the system is broken, and there's good and bad in everything. Like there's good judges, there's bad judges, there's good caseworkers, there's bad caseworkers, there's good foster parents, there's bad foster parents. So, I think that's probably true in every aspect of it. But just overall, the system is very broken. So I think at the end of this, I hope to be an advocate. Like, I feel like what's been so planted, the seed that's been like so planted in me that I just like know for a fact now that I'm this far along in it is this is the hill I will die on. Yeah. And the advocacy for me won't stop. Like, there might be a point where, we close our license, but the advocacy part won't stop for me ever.
Hi, friends. So we are back, and I am so excited to introduce you guys to my friend Desi. So tonight we are going to be opening up about motherhood. We're going to be talking about her experience as a foster mom and just the foster care system. And I am just so excited for you guys to hear what she has to say, because I have learned so much just through your journey.
Well, thank you.
I'm just so grateful that you're taking the time to just like talk about this, to be vulnerable. And like, I feel like you're going to bless a lot of people. So,
well, I hope so. And thank you for inviting me. This is an honor to be here and to be able to have this conversation. So I'm excited. Yeah. A little nervous, but I'm excited.
Well, nothing to be nervous about.
Just two girlfriends
talking. Two girlfriends talking. Exactly. So tell us a little bit of just your testimony, and also let's just start from the beginning of like just how you and your husband, Steve, like even wanted to start a family. And like, maybe we could even talk about just like, maybe like what your expectations of what starting a family, what you thought it was going to be, and kind of just how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, I think it starts with with me having a foundation of faith. I grew up as a pastor grandkid. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm like, I know we call it like PK in church. Okay. That's like code for like pastor's kid, but I'm like a pastor's grandkid, a PGK. So I always grew up with that foundation in my home. And so I feel like, even like going back to like just being like a little girl and like, pretending about like getting married and being a mom, I don't know, but I always felt like there was a seed planted for me young that my story was going to look different. And of course, as like a young girl, I didn't know what that meant. Right. So then fast forward to, my husband and I wanting to start a family. And it's like, we joke now, but it's like, at the time when we met, I was 28. And I felt like I really wanted to just like start a family already. Mm-hmm. And so I remember like when we started dating, I was just kind of like, I'm not a spring chicken. Like, we need to get this going. So it's just really wild that our journey took us to like where we are, just because I thought it was going to look so different. I thought we were going to like, get married and have kids like right away, like before 30, Mm-hmm. So to like start motherhood at like 36, now I'm 37. No, so 35 really is when this journey began for us. But it's just like kind of crazy to show that like it was never my plan, like never my plan. It was always like God's plan, Yeah. But yeah, so I think that that's where it started, was just, I had a feeling, I guess, that my story wasn't going to be traditional. So then when Steve and I got married, again, I was like, we're having babies. Yeah. Let's go. Right away. No pressure, Carlos. But then, we tried to get pregnant on our own for a little while. Then we're not having any success, so we started looking into fertility issues. And then when we first started seeing fertility doctors, it really brought us down the journey of me being diagnosed with endometriosis. Wow. Which is something that I like had lived with and just didn't even know that I had. Like, I knew, sorry to get like graphic, but I knew I had like painful periods, but I just thought like that was normal. Like, I didn't think periods were comfortable, So getting diagnosed with endometriosis was really like eye-opening. And I was just like, okay, like this kind of makes sense now. And what all the things I had been experienced had like a reason, I had surgeries, I had lots of treatment for that. And then the doctors really felt like after my surgery that I was going to be able to get pregnant. So when that didn't happen, that led us to another fertility doctor. And I just very vividly remember this day, Nick, where when she first met me, she said, like, I just want to start over. I know you, like, I came with all the, with all my papers and my surgery notes and all the things. And she was like, I know you've been through all this, but I just want to like paint the picture as to why you can't get pregnant. So we're just going to start from scratch. Mm-hmm. So she did all the tests over again to see if anything had changed, because at that point we'd already been on this journey for a few years.
Okay.
So I remember the appointment where she was giving me the results, and she looked me right in the eyes and said, it's just not going to happen for you. And you'd think that would be very painful.
Yeah.
But at that point, I think it had been close to like 7 years of trying. It really felt like a relief.
Like you had your answer.
Yeah. It just felt like we could close that door and, see what like God had in store for us.
Yeah.
I think adoption was on my heart early because my mom, if you know her, she's just like the mother to all. Like she just loves kids like so well. And so I feel like that was just like a natural thing for me. So we kind of started looking into adoption, and somebody had mentioned to us like fostering. And I was like, to be honest, I was probably like, hell no.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Like, it just seems hard. And I just know that I'm a very sensitive person. So I was just like, it's just not for me.
What, like, I guess before going into this experience, what were those preconceived notions? Like, why was it a no?
Yeah. Great question. I think it's just knowing that it's not permanent. Like, I just knew, the only thing I knew of foster care was like that there's potential for them to go home.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was just like, I'll get too attached, which is like, that's like the cliche thing that everyone says. Mm-hmm. But I just didn't think that was going to be in the cards for me. Like, I just thought it was going to be way too hard. I just know myself, and I know I'm so sensitive that I was just like, there's no way.
Yeah.
So I remember it was on our anniversary in 2020 where we're having like a date night, like anniversary dinner. And Steve was like, I think we're being called to foster care. And it was something that I actually felt like I already knew ever since that that seed got planted. But I was just like fighting it. And I just didn't I didn't want to do it, So I was just kind of like, I can't fight it anymore. And I think you're right. And I think that we have to start doing this. So we started the foster care journey in October of 2020.
Okay. And like, had you guys, like, but when you were so resistant to it, had that conversation initially come up between you and Steve?
Yeah. And it was a no, like a hard no, just because like, the seed was planted. Somebody had given us the idea, and we knew that there was a need, but I just didn't feel like it was for me. Yeah. And Steve knows me too. And I think he also agreed that like probably couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we did have that conversation. And then I just think that, I don't know, something about that dinner, like it shifted for us to where it just felt like it wasn't like an idea anymore. It was a calling that we like could no longer fight.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And even during the time frame that you guys felt like, okay, we're going to do this. It's like in the middle of a pandemic.
Yep.
I don't know what foster care was like prior to 2020, but God knows where it was in that pivotal time when you guys decided to say yes. And like, what was then that process like? Do you go fill an application with the state or the county? Like, what does that all look like?
Yeah, so there is like a state, website that you can go onto and like request information, and they basically have someone call you and kind of walk you through the steps. And I think at that point, there's probably a lot of people that get turned off, like even on step one. So if you're still interested after that initial phone call, then they'll start registering you for classes, and they assign someone to you that kind of like walks you through the entire journey. So if you have questions that come up or you need support along the way, like you kind of have a person. But if what I think I remember is we were the first class to do virtual foster care class.
Okay.
Because prior to COVID, they were meeting in person at some city building, I think. And then they shut down for COVID. And I think when they reopened in October, when we were like the first class to go through virtual.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long do you have to take the classes before they give you your license?
I don't know what it was like in person, because I think that virtual was like shorter. So it was longer. Like it was like 2-hour classes instead of being there for 8 hours.
Yeah.
I want to say it was 5 months of classes. And even then, like, that's just the beginning, you know? Yeah.
And then from there, you take your 5 months of classes, and then what's next?
You pass the class, you get a certificate, then you get in touch with a licensing worker, and they start working with you on your house. There's all kinds of insane restrictions, requirements that you have to like have done in your home to become a foster parent that you just like wouldn't think of. So then we started that process. And then once our house was like approved, I forget what there was like a tiny hurdle. I forget what it was now though. It's like, I feel like it's been so long, and then eventually we did get our license. And I think that finally happened in, I want to say it was April of 2021. Yeah.
And I think you're right, because I think it was around that time when we did have your baby shower.
Yep.
Yeah. And so when you're going through this process, like your intention and your heart, both you and your husband, it was like, okay, we want to be foster parents, but our heart is for adoption.
Yeah, I think that was our heart going into it, for sure. And then when you go into the classes, they really talk about reunification and how that's the goal. And we started to see the other side of it. And so then I think that we like understood the assignment. Yeah. So our, mentality shifted, and we just said, look, like we feel like our forever baby is in this system somewhere. But it might not happen right away, but just when it comes up that there is a baby that needs an adoptive resource, like we will be that. Yeah. But the goal is reunification, which means either going, home to the biological parents or for the state to find a family member that's willing to take the child.
Okay. And like with you guys, like, communicate, like, do you guys have to communicate that, like, hey, like we are an open home, we also are very much interested in adoption, like, is that something that like helps you guys, or
I think it just when a child comes into care, there's an investigation that happens, right? And then somebody decides that it's safest for this child to go into care. A lot of times that's abuse, neglect, drugs, and alcohol. And then there's a team called the placement team, and they look for families that are able and willing to take the children. So when we get the call from the placement team, we do let them know we are an adoptive resource. And or sometimes they ask if you're an adoptive resource because they might know more of the story of like this child is going to potentially need an adoptive resource, or we already think the family is going to be able to be reunified. So it kind of helps to be able to put that like in the beginning.
Yeah. And so like with preparation, right? Like, because, I'm so grateful that I've been able to like witness like this from the very beginning and just seeing like everything.
You've loved on our kids so well.
Oh my gosh.
They love their
those babies. And so, like with preparation, like we had threw you a baby shower and it was so much fun. Yeah. And, but it's like preparation does look different. Yeah.
I want to talk about the baby shower because I think that is tough. And I remember somebody saying to me like, why are we having a baby shower for you? You're not even pregnant. And so I feel like, it is about preparation. It is like, I know that I'm not pregnant, but we're still expecting a baby into our home. Yeah. And like, we still need all the things that new parents need. So, and also it gave me a sense of normalcy since I wasn't going to be able to experience, having kids naturally.
Whose idea was the baby shower initially?
I probably have to give credit to Sarah. I think it was probably her.
Yeah. Because that was so much fun. And like, but I just, like you said, like it the preparation side's a little different, right? We didn't know like how old the child was going to be, the gender, like, but at the same time, like you said, like with you guys are new parents, like having to at least have like the basics and like having again, like that, like community surrounding you guys and covering you guys. Yeah. So I like if we could even talk about like your foster care community, because I know that was like a new door that was open for you guys the second you started this journey. Yeah.
And it's huge too, because I think that if there's one thing that I could tell somebody to, do in preparation of becoming a foster parent, it is to get into community with other foster parents. Yeah. There is nothing about foster care that isn't trauma. It's trauma, all the way around. It's trauma for a child to be taken away from their natural parents. Yeah. It's trauma for the kid. It's trauma for the parents. It's trauma. It's trauma to witness. It's trauma to walk through with the kids. So to have somebody else that understands that trauma with you, I think is so important, because I think one thing that I like regret actually a little bit in the beginning is just kind of, word vomiting like the whole story, and just like word vomiting like maybe too much to people that didn't understand the trauma. And it just showed me that like I really need to be not only more protective of just, foster care in general, and of my kids and their stories. It's their story to tell, but also just like being more mindful of like who I'm talking to. And so I feel like having other foster moms to like have that community with made me feel like I have a safe place where I can, really, I don't know how else to say it, but like word vomit and like, and not feel bad about it.
And for them to really truly understand what you're going through too. Cause it's like, I mean, we can help and like support and pray for and like, and be there for you. But like, we've never gone through what you guys have gone through so far. So, and I know we can't like talk about like all the kids specifically, but can you share like even your experience, like when you had your first, foster kid and just like, maybe even talking about like the feeling and experience of like, the pickup and like what that was like in the first few weeks with the
I don't
kid?
even know if you know this part of the story yet, but since we got licensed in April, I think it was in May or maybe even the first week of June, my little sister got married. And we were actually at her wedding when we got the very first phone call.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was actually like all the things, like it was so exciting, but also so devastating because it was like exciting that like our license was live and we were getting phone calls, but also like devastating because I wasn't in town to take placement.
So the first call before the first baby you actually got. Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So it was like so exciting that like my phone rang, but then also like crushing that I had to say no because we weren't in town.
Right. And so how long between like that?
Just a matter of days.
Call? Okay.
Yeah. I think like, we got the call on a Saturday morning, which was her wedding day. And we were planning on going back to Vegas by Monday or something. And then I think on Tuesday was when we got the call for the little boy that we did take home. And we picked him up straight from the hospital. He was only 4 days old.
Wow.
And he ended up being with us for almost 4 months and he was reunified with a family member.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was just the most, beautiful story because I feel like we absolutely, needed to be there for him for that like time in his life. But the fact that they were able to locate family.
Yep.
And the family was amazing. It still is amazing to this day. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, we actually still keep in touch with them and get updates. And he just turned 2. And it's so cool.
So crazy how much time goes by.
I know.
I remember meeting him.
I know.
Like, he was so little.
Yeah, you died. You saw how big he is now.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And like, and I know I mentioned like we wanted to talk about this too. So like, in becoming a new mother, like, typically you would get the maternity leave, like the time off to spend time with your new baby. And you haven't done that with any of the kids.
I have not. Yeah. So I think that definitely, depends on the company that you work for and like what they offer. I'm very grateful that the company that I work for does offer maternity leave for, having a child, for adopting, and for foster care. But I just felt like, we never know these kids' stories when they come into our home. Are they going to be with us for a day, a week, a month, a year? We just never know. And so I just felt like, it would be more helpful to me to like stay on routine and, not like try to take maternity leave every time. We get, So I think our plan is that, if and when a case goes to adoption, that I will take that time to really, like celebrate and bond and
But, and with that being your experience, like, what was that like? I mean, you had a newborn at home, but then also like juggling your job. Cause it's like, I know when I talk to some of my friends who are moms, it's a juggle. It's a juggle. It's like a different level of juggle that maybe our husbands don't have to go through, or I myself, like, I don't have kids, so like I don't even really fully understand, like, okay, when you're sleep deprived and like, but then you like need to handle things at work and like that pressure. I don't know if it's like a pressure to perform or like just like a pressure to like follow through. Like, did you experience that?
Definitely.
Like,
yeah. I mean, I think with the first one, I mean, he was so fresh.
Yeah.
He was only a couple of days old when we got him home, so they just sleep a lot. So I probably took like maybe a couple of days off to like adjust. Yeah. Because it was the first baby we've ever had in our care. And that was just like a whole of like learning how to be a mom. I feel like, traditionally moms have like 9 months to prepare. And even though I had the foster care classes and I was kind of told like one thing to help like mentally is to like tell yourself that like when you're in class, like that's your like pregnancy, but I still don't think it feels real until, you are holding a baby. Yeah. So it probably took us a couple days to adjust, but then, I mean, I just juggled. I figured out how to, I'm very fortunate that my company is flexible, and I mean, I do mostly work from home, so that I figured out how to do it all, but it wasn't easy, especially that one did get reunified, which is beautiful. But then we took on 2 little girls. And as they got older too, it got really challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just get through it. Just like that. I feel like that's the part that's like normal mom stuff is you just get through it. Yeah. And maybe even in a sense, slightly easier for me just because a lot of moms are also like recovering themselves and having to heal their own bodies. Yeah. And, I didn't have that portion of it. So yeah, maybe in that sense, it was even easier for me.
Yeah. And even with like just some of these like, I don't want to say like myths or like things that people would just assume, like why people get into foster or like benefits for foster parents, like all of those things.
Yes,
like,
can we please?
Yes, I would love to talk about that because even just with your guys' personal experience, just in the time frame that you guys have started your journey as foster parents, like I remember when there was a formula shortage.
Yeah.
And like, I remember like you and I had conversations on like, okay,
got scary.
like how do we get your babies fed?
Yeah.
And you guys, it's not like, it's not like you're pumping. It's not like you had any reserve or like, and on top of that, there are sensitivities that babies have. And so sometimes it's
one of our kiddos
specific, you know? And it's like, you just assume like, oh, like they'll be fine. Like babies are fine. Like they don't, but in this case, it's like, it was almost like a crisis. Like it truly was a crisis. And like even through that, it's like the state, they could only do so much. And it wasn't like essentially their responsibility to make sure that the foster kids were fed. So it's like, what were you able to do in those moments when like, when the aisles were like fully like bought out?
That's where the foster community was just, it made me so proud to be part of that community at that time. There's like a foster mom Facebook group, and it was just like all hands on deck. Everybody was like, okay, who needs what, who's where, who has extra. And we just like, everyone just like had enough to get each other through until, it started to turn around. But yeah, that's when it just like made me so proud of the community. And that's one thing that I have learned is like when you're in the community, everyone takes care of everyone.
Yeah.
So I'd love to like pour into that more.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really cool to see that they really look after each other.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was like, oh my gosh, like,
it was scary.
Like, we can't forget about these babies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I've learned so much from you too, just about things about just the system that I just didn't even know about before. And so can we like share like some of like, I don't want to say like their statistics or numbers, but even just like, okay, like where's the need? What is the shortage? Like, and it's not just babies, it's children that are under 18 that need homes. So can we talk about just, I guess maybe in Clark County in general, like what's the need right now? Like,
there's a lot. I meant to look it up, but I didn't.
No worries.
But I think
guess nationwide then?
Yeah, okay. Nationwide, there's over 400,000 kids in foster care right now.
Wow.
Yeah. I know that Clark County is, we're really, I don't know what the word is, like over capacity. Like we have too many kids in care and not enough foster parents. Yeah. We're definitely in that situation now. So yeah, it's challenging, but yeah, 400,000 kids nationwide.
And 400,000 now, are those kids, they're all in the system. Do some of them like have a place to live or they are not like with foster care yet? Like,
yeah, it's a mix.
Okay.
Yeah. So in Clark County, there are, foster homes that have, multiple kids, some of them, but then there's also, state, places that the kids go to until they are able to find a foster home.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you, like you said, there's more kids than there are homes for these kids to live in.
Yes. By a long shot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you hear that and you're just like, what can we do?
Yeah.
Other than like, guys, go get your foster licenses.
Yeah. Ideally, I think this is what's so important. Well, first of all, I want to kind of circle back to the preconceived notions.
Sure.
Because I think that there's things I hear about foster care. One of them I hear is I'll get too attached. So I want to address that if I can.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the, mentality of like, I can't because I'll get too attached. Like I understand that because I was that. But I think that first of all, the kids deserve the attachment.
Yeah.
So I think that that's okay for us to get too attached and actually like that's exactly how it should be.
Yeah.
I think as children, like our job as adults is to protect them,
right.
you know, but then, you know, and it is to get to attach to them and love on them to our fullest ability. But then as adults, like we can process the emotion of what happens when they get reunified, but the kids just need to understand what it feels like to be loved, period. Mm-hmm. So I think it's okay to get too attached. So I want to like shut that, you know, preconceived notion down, because I just feel like if you feel like I can't do it because I'll get too attached, then maybe you should.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
But then I also want to say, you know, just thinking back, like, you know, to the Bible, right?
Yeah.
I think that was also something that really solidified, like, becoming a foster parent for me was even in James, it references, you know, that God calls us to love on the orphans and the elderly. And so I feel like that verse was really placed, like, on my heart in this journey to, like, this was my calling.
Yeah.
And I want to share with you how I knew it was my calling. And that's because, you know, when you look at the Bible, like, even using the story of, like, David and Goliath, right? Yeah. You know, if God would have used a giant to fight Goliath, then people could say, you know what I mean? Like, was it God? Or like, was it just the coincidence? Maybe this giant was like stronger than this giant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But God didn't use a giant. He used David.
Yeah.
So I feel like that in the situation is like, I'm like David and foster care is the Goliath, you know, because I think that if you know me, you know how sensitive I am. And so it would be very easy, I mean, for like my friends, for my family, for my husband to like look at me and say like, this isn't for you. You're too sensitive. But I feel like that's what proves that this is a calling for me, is because if I can do it, as highly sensitive as I am, you know, then anyone can do it. And I feel like that's what really God is like using me to show.
Yeah. And like, and even with your experience, like, yes, like you've loved all of these children and you've loved them so well.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's like, we can't not say that it wasn't hurtful, like, or it wasn't like, it wasn't like a hurting experience. Like when, as great as reunification is, it's like, that's still just as heartbreaking.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that it took foster care for me to understand, is that you can be in two feelings at once. So, you know, with the reunification of the baby that we just had, oh, sorry, I could cry.
No, yeah.
You know, I can be sad. And also be so happy for her family and that there was restoration there. And that is beautiful. And that is, you know, the goal, and it is what is meant to be. Yeah. And I believe that she's where she's supposed to be. Yeah. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. But I just like applaud you so much, because it's like you said, like with even being a sensitive person and just like loving it as hard as you do, it's like the fact that you are still willing to have an open home to more children in sacrifice to like your heart, you know, like that. It, to me, it's like, it is like a faith strengthening, like part too. Cause it's like, you know,
look at us.
Oh my gosh. We're like emotional. Sorry guys.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, but not sorry, because
honestly, like, I knew this was going to happen. There was no way I was going to get through this without crying.
It's just like, you know, but that, I think the beautiful part of that too is just like how much you and your husband like have leaned in on God, and knowing that like there was no way you guys were going to be able to do this on your own, and like allowing like your heart to break like over and over again, but like leaning on the Lord to like restore that so that you can like love on these children. And like you said, like these kids are yours in heaven, you know, like, so it's like, it's just, it's been so beautiful to watch, but you know, like we grow attached to the kids too.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's another aspect that I didn't take into consideration. You know, I feel like the conversations were definitely between Steve and I, right? Like we definitely like walked through all these fertility treatments and options together. And then we sat at dinner together and we decided to be foster parents. Yeah. And in those conversations, we didn't think about our community and our family and how this would impact them. Yeah. So that's when like something that was actually harder to walk through than I anticipated. And only because I just didn't think about it, you know? But even, you know, having to have conversations with my 10-year-old niece about, you know, where her cousins went, or, you know?
And even like your guys' parents, like, like it's like such a blessing. Like they get to have like more grandbabies, like come through their life, but it also like, it's their, it's like their grief too. Like also having to say goodbye. Yeah. How are your parents doing?
They're doing good. Good. Yeah. They do just love my kids so well, and I'm so grateful. Yeah. And I think, you know, they had reservations in the beginning for sure, like especially just for me and knowing how sensitive I am. And they were probably one of the people that were like, are you sure? No, like, are you sure you're sure?
Yeah.
But also, you know, like I've had so many conversations with my mom over the past, you know, few years now that have been like, where she's just like, I thought it would feel different, but it doesn't. Like, I just love these kids as if, you know, they were your own. And she does love them so well. And so they are so lucky to have her as a nana.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When I don't know if we didn't touch base on this, but like when you guys were talking about like alternative ways to become parents. Did you guys ever consider like an adoption agency, or like was there a reason why like foster care like was the path?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's probably the same reason why we didn't end up going through with IVF. And it's just because I didn't feel called to that. That's like really what it comes down to. I know it's an amazing option, both. You know, I'm going through an adoption agency and going through IVF. I think both of them are beautiful. And if they bring in your family, then I'm for it. It just didn't feel for me. So I just didn't know what that looked like. And then, you know, I feel like foster care was just really placed on our hearts, and it was like, okay, this is why, because this is what we're supposed to walk through. But I just didn't feel called to that. That's just what it is.
What do you feel like, as like we're like wrapping up this conversation? Like, well, one, I guess the first question is like looking back to like that little girl, like knowing that like your path was going to be different. Like how has this like shifted your mindset and mentality around like the term like motherhood? Because it is like, it's not like a cookie cutter thing. It's not so black and white.
I just think that like, and even just, you know, walking through, it feels the same as, you know, that seed like being planted as a little girl, but then also just like walking through like, you know, the foster care classes and kind of being told like I should consider that as my pregnancy, and having the baby shower, and, you know, just trying to make things as like normal for myself as possible. But I just feel like it just showed me that, you know, everyone's path to motherhood, you know, could and like might look different, but it's all beautiful, you know? And it is true that like, I really felt called to be a mom, but I didn't necessarily feel like an attachment to how I became a mom. You know, like, I think that's why it didn't feel painful for me during that, you know, meeting with that doctor where she looked me in the face and told me it just wasn't in the cards for me, or whatever she said, you know, like it just, I feel like that's why I was just like, it just like gave me like a sense of peace to like let that go. But that didn't mean that I didn't get to become a mom. You know?
Exactly. Like you still, you were still going to be a mother, like no matter what.
And I just think if you can love babies, then you can be a mom.
Definitely. What is something that you feel like you would love someone to take away from our conversation?
I think just like addressing some of the preconceived notions that we did, but also adding on to that too is it's so crazy to me now to think that this even is like a thought that people have, but like the people that think about it, like that people just do it for money. Okay. We don't. There's not a lot of it, but that's just, that is like, when I hear that, it just makes me cringe. So I think if I can shut that down, that would be helpful. But I think that the most important thing for me is when Steve and I decided to do this, to get on this journey of becoming foster parents, we had no one in our sphere that was in this community. So we really just had no idea what we were doing, what we were getting into. And so I feel like it feels important to me to raise awareness for just people to understand more. The system is broken, to say the least. And that the system is broken, and there's good and bad in everything. Like there's good judges, there's bad judges, there's good caseworkers, there's bad caseworkers, there's good foster parents, there's bad foster parents. So, you know, I think that's probably true in every aspect of it, but just overall, the system is very broken. So I think at the end of this, I hope to be an advocate. Like I feel like what's been so, you know, planted, the seed that's been like so planted in me that I just like know for a fact now that I'm this far along in it is this is the hill I will die on. And the advocacy for me won't stop. Like there might be a point where, you know, we close our license, but the advocacy part won't stop for me ever. Because foster kids matter. And this conversation matters, and it's important. So just awareness is really the goal here. Also, there are, over 400,000 kids in foster care.
Yes.
So, if we were able to inspire one family or 400,000 families to become foster parents, we could end the system.
Yeah.
And that would be the goal.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, I encourage anyone who is interested in foster care or thinking about it to really look into it and, find someone who is in the system that can help you along the way. But also, there's just other ways to get involved too.
Yeah.
So there's things you can actually do, like becoming a CASA, which is just the court-appointed, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, special person for the kid that, like, you really become the liaison between maybe the kids, especially like if they're older, they might not feel comfortable like telling the full truth to their foster parent.
Okay.
They might not feel comfortable telling the full truth to their caseworker. So the CASA kind of comes alongside them almost like as a friend, a confidant, and becomes their voice and advocates for them. So you can become a CASA. That's another way that you can support foster kids. You can also just love on foster families.
Yeah.
Check on your foster family friends.
Yes.
We're not okay.
And like for those couples or individuals who are potentially seeking to get their foster care license, like what were the avenues that you were researching? Because before you were actually invited into this space and community of foster parents, like were you like going through the Google rabbit? Like was it on Instagram, YouTube? Like what were those resources for you?
I probably wish we had more, but I think that we honestly just like found the Nevada foster care license and just got like plugged in right away.
Okay, yeah, you guys just like
and I think that so I don't think we did any research, which probably was a blessing because I think if we had gone down the rabbit hole, I probably would have talked myself out of it very quickly. But I think that if you are even slightly interested or curious, the first thing you can do is find someone who's in it and let them walk with you through it, because I don't know how I would do this without my other foster mom friends.
Yeah.
Foster care is trauma, like, like we were saying. And so, to have someone that understands that trauma with you is life-changing. Like it's the only way to survive this. So you really need to like find a buddy first.
Yeah.
And then, the classes and all that stuff will be easier if you have someone to walk it out with.
Okay. Well, you guys, we are not meant to do this life alone.
No.
And definitely not something as serious as foster care. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. I just knew that our conversation was going to help a lot of people. And I know hopefully like trumps any weird like preconceived notions about foster care, and also like just pique more curiosity and also like interest in like you said, like how we can support the system, like even if we don't become foster parents ourselves, like how we can support. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I just love the work that you guys are doing.
Well, thank you.
And I'm just so grateful that you guys are my friends and that I'm part of your guys' lives and these kids' lives. And
we're so thankful for you because the kids love Auntie Nick.
They love the babies. So, yeah. Well, I'm excited for when we finally get to have you on again and you guys are going through the adoption process. So definitely tune in for part 2 when that happens. And we love you guys. Have a good night.
Bye.